From the 1941 MGM musical Ziegfeld Girl, and a song that went on to become synonymous with one of the film's stars, Lana Turner, that was You Stepped Out of a Dream, sung by Tony Martin. Lana Turner is the subject of our discussion today with returning guest April VeVea, author of the books Puffblicity, An Appreciation of Jane Mansfield, The 50s Pictures, and Marilyn Monroe, A Day in the Life. This conversation today is part of our continuing series of talks about classic Hollywood blondes, one of my favorite subjects. April, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to speak to you.
Well, the feeling's mutual. And I'm glad we're having this conversation today because the last classic Hollywood blonde we covered was Betty Grable. And in that context, we talked about how Betty Grable was a huge star, big sex symbol in her day, and now is not so widely known. I think the same thing can be said for Lana Turner. If she's remembered by the general public at all these days, it's for scandal and maybe not something connected to her career. But again, a big, big star. And even though I knew of Lana Turner because I was a fan of old-time radio and I grew up listening to the Bob Hope Show and Lana Turner was a guest, I didn't actually see a Lana Turner movie until, I want to say 15 years ago or so, when I was trapped here at the radio station during a blizzard with nothing to do, and I watched Johnny Eager on YouTube. And I got to see TNT in action, Robert Taylor and Lana Turner together as a team. And I was just blown away because she was so good in the movie and just ridiculously beautiful. What's your experience with Lana Turner?
Yeah, so interestingly, the first celebrity biography or autobiography I ever read was Lana Turner's autobiography. And I actually own Lana Turner's copy of it. It's one of my prized possessions.
Wow.
Yeah, she got all bound. The publisher bound it for her. It's all in leather, and she has her little book plate that says Lana Turner on the inside. So that's my roundabout Lana Turner story.
Fantastic. I do have that book, and I haven't read it yet. It's only been out for 45 or 50 years. I haven't read it.
It's been a few weeks.
Yeah, I'll get around to it. So let's start at the very beginning with the famous story of Lana, or rather Julia Jean Turner, being discovered at the lunch counter at Schwab's drugstore. Is this story true?
Okay, it's kind of myth, but kind of true. It was a lunch counter. It wasn't Schwab's.
Okay.
So it was actually at this place called the Top Hat Cafe, and she's discovered there by the editor of the Hollywood Reporter. And in a very 16-year-old way of speaking, he comes up to her, gives her his card, and is like, "Would you like to be in movies?" And she's like, "I'll have to ask my mother." He's like, "Okay, that's fine, whatever you have to do." And, obviously she goes home and she asks her mom, and her mom's kind of apprehensive, but she ends up connecting with him, and then he introduces her to Zeppo Marx, who is actually working as like a talent agent at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And Zeppo introduces her to a director at Warner Brothers named Mervyn LeRoy. And Mervyn LeRoy is, I don't want to say infatuated with her because that, denotes something kind of romantic, but he's very drawn to her, and he thinks, she's going to be the next big screen sensation. So he has her sign a contract with Warner Brothers at like $50 a week. And eventually Leroy moves to MGM, and he tells Jack Warner, let me just take this Lana Turner girl with me. And Jack Warner's like, that's fine. She's never going to amount to anything anyway. And, of course, that's a huge mistake on his part because she becomes one of MGM's biggest stars.
But I think it's her first film from 1937, They Won't Forget. That's the movie where she has a very small part, but she walks across the screen, and that was enough to grab everyone's attention.
Yeah, no, that's a Warner Brothers film, and she's wearing a very becoming sweater. And, when Lana would talk about that film. She said she was absolutely embarrassed by watching herself, jiggle across the screen, and she could feel herself just, falling deeper and deeper into her seat.
And that's where she got the nickname the Sweater Girl.
Yes, she's probably the most famous sweater girl at the time, and sets off a chain reaction of many sweater girls.
On the roof of the Hotel Shelburne in New York, a contest to choose the National Sweater Queen of 1949 gets into full swing. The entries include some of the country's leading models. Now, we've heard that the men don't care much for fashion stories, so will each wife in the audience please lean over and cover up her husband's eyes? Thank you, ladies. We're sure that hubby hasn't the slightest interest in these lovely sweaters.
As we take a look at Lana Turner's screen career, she was in a number of hit films and a number of films that went on to become classic movies. And we played a song from Ziegfeld Girl earlier. That's another milestone for her. That scene where she's walking down the steps, becomes this big moment in her career.
Yeah, no, she has a very varied career. I've always thought that Ziegfeld Girl was just the meanest casting for Judy Garland because they have her playing opposite Hedy Lamarr and Lana Turner, and I was like, that didn't help that poor girl's self-esteem. But yes, it's a very glamorous film, and I think that's just the common denominator when it comes to Lana Turner films, as she's going to be glamorous.
Speaking of Judy Garland, Lana and Judy were both in Love Finds Andy Hardy, which is another one of my favorite early Lana Turner movies.
Do you really like to dance?
Yeah, I sure do. But that's, of course, with the right partner. Now, I bet you could dance swell. Some girls, they like a fella to hold them real tight, but I bet you're different. A fella'd be too afraid to hold you too tight.
Well, I am rather delicate, but, it depends on who my partner is.
Oh. Whoa!
I better go in. Mother'll be wondering why I'm staying out so long. Goodbye, Andrew, darling. See you tomorrow.
Goodbye. Say, she's my girl. Don't forget that. Oh, but you hired me to date her, didn't you? Yeah, but you didn't have to kiss her. No, I didn't kiss her. She kissed me.
There was a bit of a twist on it because Andy Hardy, of course, is, obsessed with Lana Turner's character, and it's supposed to be, he and Judy have this tension, but he ends up with Lana Turner's character, and it's a cute movie. I'm not going to say it's a great movie, but it's very much in the Andy Hardy series.
And if I recall correctly, Mickey Rooney said that he had a romance with Lana Turner, which Lana Turner denied.
Yeah, Mickey Rooney claimed to have a romance with everyone. And maybe they did. Late 1930s, early 1940s, Mickey Rooney, it's definitely possible. But I know that Lana was absolutely horrified that he made that claim. So if he did, he was with Ava Gardner, so we can't rule it out.
Oh, speaking of which, here's another connection. Ava Gardner was also married to Artie Shaw, and so was Lana Turner. In fact, it seems like for any young starlet in Hollywood, it was a rite of passage to marry Artie Shaw.
So you're not wrong. It's kind of a rite of passage to at least date Artie Shaw. I think we talked about Artie Shaw last time too, because Betty Grable dated Artie Shaw. When Artie Shaw married Lana Turner, Betty Grable and Judy Garland were both horribly upset because he'd been dating the two of them as well. So it's definitely a thing, but when they're first working together, they can't stand each other. So that's why their elopement was so shocking to people, because everyone thought they hated each other. When they're doing the dancing co-ed, they don't get along, but love blossoms, I guess.
Our guest today is author April VeVea as we remember Lana Turner on the program today. And aside from her off-screen life with Artie Shaw, she was paired on-screen 4 times with Clark Gable. There was Honky Tonk, Betrayed, Somewhere I'll Find You, and Homecoming, all of them very successful films.
And, of course, if you bring up Clark, the whole thing comes that Carol Lombard thought they were having an affair, and she quick rushed home, although I will say Olympia Carricow did an excellent biography on Carol and shows that story isn't exactly true, but they were absolutely dynamite on screen. I mean, they're MGM's two biggest stars. Never mind the fact that Lana's like 20 years younger than him. It simply works.
You know, it's surprising, considering just how big a star Lana Turner was, that TCM hasn't had a Lana Turner retrospective or some kind of a night of Lana Turner movies.
It really is, which is odd because they own most of her filmography. But I don't know, maybe they think that she's just too controversial to show.
Well, we might as well get into that a little bit. You know, we mentioned the Carole Lombard situation, and certainly if you've read other celebrities' biographies, like Esther Williams, for example, there are stories about Lana Turner, and I guess the polite way of saying it is that there are stories that maybe she was promiscuous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say, Lana admits in her autobiography that she could be promiscuous at times. She wasn't always the most faithful person. She considered the love of her life Tyrone Power. Mm-hmm. They had an affair for quite a while, and then Fox carted him off to Europe, and he met Linda Christensen, and Lana always believed that Linda Christensen was actually a plant to get him away from her. And during that time, it's a very messy situation. But yes, it is safe to say that she lived a very exuberant lifestyle.
Let's talk about a movie that I think kind of plays into later perceptions of Lana Turner, and it's a great film. It's a classic film. The Postman Always Rings Twice, 1946. Opposite John Garfield. I think there was a rumor that they actually didn't get along, but I think Lana dispelled that rumor that they got along fine.
Yeah, no, I think it kind of became accepted that if Lana Turner enjoyed working with an actor, they must have had an affair, and that didn't happen with John Garfield. But yeah, she liked working with him. I never got the impression they were best friends, but I don't think there was any animosity on set. They were just, they got along and they were good co-workers.
There's one thing we could do that would fix everything for us.
What? Pray for something to happen to Nick?
Something like that.
Cora.
Well, you suggested it yourself once, didn't you?
I was only joking.
Were you?
Yes, I was.
Or had you started to think about it a little?
Maybe I said it, but I didn't really mean it.
Well, I say it again now, and I do mean it. Frank, listen to me. I'm not what you think I am. I've made a big mistake in my life, and I've got to be this way just once to fix it.
They hang you for a thing like that.
Oh, but not if you do it right. And you're smart, Frank. You'll think of a way. Plenty of men have.
He never did any harm to me.
But, darling, can't you see how happy you and I would be together here without him?
I mean, there have been certainly many femme fatales in movies, but she's got to be in the top 10.
I'm going to agree that those white shorts with the crop top and the turban, it's just absolute perfection. And, a lot of people will say that Lana Turner couldn't act, and my response to that is always, well, everyone thinks that she was her character from The Postman Always Rings Twice, so she must have had some acting ability. She's absolutely perfect in that movie. And, unfortunately, it's when the code's in full force, so she has to die for all of her misdeeds at the end. Sorry, I just spoiled it. So if anyone's seen it, just pretend I didn't say that.
Yeah, well, if anybody hasn't seen that movie, I don't feel so bad about having not read her autobiography because that movie's much older.
No, but it is. And, so she has, there's a horrible death at the end because it's very code specific. But everything up until that point in that movie is absolute perfection. She just fully encompasses this most despicable woman, but she's just gorgeous on the outside. It's definitely in my top 10 in case you can't tell by how much bigger I'm using in discussing it.
And as we leave the 1940s, she continued to have great success in the 1950s. I mean, one of her biggest hits is the movie The Bad and the Beautiful, 1952. I mean, that's a classic Hollywood movie about Hollywood.
One of my favorites, honestly, is Imitation of Life. I'm not going to say that it's aged necessarily well in all parts, but it is genuinely a wonderful movie. You know, a lot of actresses from her time, when they get into the 50s, they're kind of pausing, they're slowing down a little bit. But Lana just continues in like these top-notch productions throughout. Not saying everyone is, or someone says, well, actually. But, you know, most of her stuff is pretty top-notch throughout the decade.
Yeah, you know, Mr. Imperium accepted. Not that great of a movie. I did read, I think, in Cheryl Crane, her daughter's big coffee table book on Lana Turner, that because Mr. Imperium fell into the public domain, it wound up being one of her movies that was on TV the most, which horrified Lana Turner.
It's such a bad movie. You know, she tried, but it's such a bad movie. It's such a weak script. But, yeah. You know, and it's one of those things, you can still find it on DVD very, very readily, and it's on YouTube. And
yeah,
I feel bad that that's a lot of people's introduction to Lana Turner.
So we've been kind of dancing around it. Why don't we just get right into it? The Johnny Stompanato situation. Would it be fair to call him a low-level mobster?
You know what? He wants to be a mobster. He wants to be this tough guy. If he was around now, he'd definitely be on Jersey Shore doing, you know, gym tan laundry. Right. But he's just kind of a loser. But, of course, he has his associates. But, yeah, low-level mobster is probably the best way to describe him. But he's gross. But he's really taken with Lana.
Well, evidently she was also taken with him. I don't know what she saw in him.
Well, so initially he lies about his age, and she thinks he's a couple years older than her. And then she finds out he's actually several years younger than her. But, yeah, I think initially he's charming. He's not bad looking. He's real tall. And he's very possessive of her. And I think initially she finds that exciting, especially as she's not old, but getting a little bit older when you're talking actress terms. So, yeah, I think he is exciting, but of course it quickly takes a very dark turn.
Yeah, well, he turned out to be abusive. And there was an incident.
The incident.
Yeah.
The incident that won't die.
Mm.
You know, there's a book that just came out on Lana, and I read this book, and it claims it has the truth, and Lana actually killed Johnny. You know, and that's the story. And anyone who has ever been on the outskirts of Hollywood will always claim Lana Turner killed Johnny. But I'm going through this book, I look at source notes, and the guy predominantly used two books. One was Lana Turner's autobiography, and she never admits to killing Johnny in there. Mm-hmm. And the other one is Darwin Porter's book.
Right.
So that just kind of shows you how much research went into that book. But Cheryl, as you mentioned, she's written two books on her mom. One is that gorgeous coffee table book, which I'm actually staring at right now because it is on my coffee table.
Mm.
And the other is Detour, which is, you know, her autobiography. And Cheryl has always stuck by, you know, that she killed Johnny. Lana passed away in 1996. I really think if Cheryl was covering for Lana, she's had 20 years to come out with it. And she's still sticking with, hey, I killed Johnny in a fateful accident. So I don't understand why people keep saying it was actually Lana.
So I have some theories as to why this is. And we had talked about it privately before this conversation, but I think people do confuse her with the character she played in The Postman Always Rings Twice.
Mm-hmm. I think that's an excellent theory.
Yeah, I think that, and also I think because of all of those stories of Lana's promiscuousness, I feel like there's some societal need to punish her for that.
Yes, I agree. There is always, I shouldn't say always, but there is a very common theme when you're discussing American culture and American society. There is still very much a puritanical undertone of promiscuous women are bad, they do bad things, and they should be punished for doing bad things. And so, yeah, I completely agree. I think your theory is spot on. Those two factors combined make Lana Turner a murderer.
And I know it's been said that the role that she played at that time that might have resembled her personal life the most was the mother she played in Peyton Place.
Mother, as soon as I can, I'm going to get dressed, pack my things, and leave Peyton Place. I never want to see this town or you again.
You can't mean it.
I mean it. I'm going to New York.
Please, Allison. I was only trying to protect you.
I was an accident that you hated and tried to hide.
But I loved you from the moment you were born. Try to believe me. Well, how will you live? What will you do for money?
I have enough to get there. I'll find a job.
Suppose you can't find a job.
Then I'll live off some men the way you did.
There's so much written about stuff with Lana, but Lana was the first to admit that she wasn't always the best parent, but she did try. And, you know, she was kind of enclosed in her own little world that was sponsored by MGM. She comes into this industry, she's still a child. You know, she graduates from the Little Red Schoolhouse on the MGM lot. And she's very coddled and she's very cared for. And she really lost touch on how to take care of herself. And so this idea that she's just this conniving criminal mastermind, I mean, I just don't think it fits in her MO at all.
If someone were to have themselves a Lana Turner film festival, what would be just a couple of movies that you would recommend?
Okay. I think I'm going to start this out with Ziegfeld Girl, just because that movie is just bonkers. It's like an acid trip in a classic Hollywood film. And then I'm going to jump to The Postman Always Rings Twice. I'm trying to think of them kind of in order.
Right.
Then I would do The Three Musketeers, because, again, she's a villain and she's in color, and it's great.
Madame de Winter, yes.
Yes. She's fabulous in that. And then, oh, goodness, I definitely have to do Peyton Place and Imitation of Life. I can't choose between those two. And then we'll make it 6. So I guess they're getting like 12 hours of Lana for this.
I'll take it.
So then we'll end with Madam X. We'll end right there. Like, Lana's still bright and high. We're not going to do anything after that. Nothing after that exists. But, yeah, we'll end at Madam X.
So, you know, for me, I recommend all of those too. And I would just mention to the audience that you probably have seen Lana Turner movies without having really set out to see them, because she's in so much. I mean, she's in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde with the Spencer Tracy one with Ingrid Bergman, Playing Against Type. She's in so many wonderful movies. Obviously, The Postman Always Rings Twice would be one I would recommend. I'd recommend Johnny Eager, too, because it's right at the very beginning of her career, and you get to see what the hype about TNT was all about, Turner and Taylor. And if you want to see as much of Lana Turner as possible, then you might want to watch The Prodigal. It's not that great of a movie, but if that's where your interest lies. She wears an outfit in that, which is pretty remarkable.
That's a very good way of putting it. I like that. I think I'm going to describe it from that way on. It's a gorgeous movie. Yeah. It's probably one of the worst movies you'll ever see, but it's a gorgeous movie.
Right. She looks great. The outfit's interesting, and it's a bonkers film. Well, April, this is so much fun. We'll have to come back and do this again with another. Oh, you know what? Don't you have news, like book news?
I do have book news. Thank you so much, because I forgot about my book news. But yes, I'm very happy to announce that my 2-volume Jane Mansfield biography has been put out by Bear Manor. Let me tell you, there aren't a whole lot of people that want a 2-volume Jane Mansfield biography, but they are willing to do it. It's packed with photos. You know, I have a photo collection that's over 2,000 photos of Jane, so a lot of them are in there. Yes, I'm very, very excited about this. So it's entitled, Was She Really Jane Mansfield? And that title might sound a little odd, but Jane actually was working on an autobiography in the late 50s called Am I Really Jane Mansfield? So it's a play on that. And that's an exclusive for you. I haven't told anyone that.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, and we'll have to do it again real soon.
All right, sounds great. Thanks for having me, David.